How does abolishing prisons or having open borders fit into that? Those are ideas that a lot of your Democrats that are warning about what happened here say are toxic.
I can't believe Zohran is actually standing by and doubling down on all of this. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're going to dive into a huge interview that's going viral that New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, of course, the far-left socialist star who's kind of taking politics and media by storm these days. Well, he just did a big interview on one of the Sunday shows where he was talking about some of his colleagues and allies in the Democratic Socialists of America aligned movement that are about to become members of Congress, and he thankfully just decided to take a rational perspective on some of their more extreme takes and say, listen, we're not going to go that far. We don't sign on. Just kidding. He didn't do that at all. Here's the headline from Mediaite. Zohran Mamdani pressed whether democratic socialist policies like abolishing prisons will work nationally. What a headline. Abolishing prisons, or ending the carceral state, as they would suggest. These are in fact the actual policies of the Democratic Socialists of America. They're somehow a real organization, and now they've already had for some time multiple affiliated members of Congress. They're about to have a bunch more. Anyway, more from the story here. Mamdani was asked about it by ABC's Jonathan Karl on This Week on Sunday. Karl wanted to know if Mamdani believed the socialist policies that several candidates he backed last week would work for Democrats outside the Big Apple, which is New York City, of course. And that's like a hilarious that's even a question. Mamdani did suggest and has suggested that Democratic Socialists could win across America. That's absolutely not true. But anyway, let's watch the first clip of him we've got pulled.
There's been a lot of attention. One of the candidates you supported who knocked off an incumbent Democrat, is Darlisa Villa-Chalier. She said some very controversial things, including calling for the abolition of prisons, couldn't say whether or not somebody who had committed murder should be in prison, called for open borders against all deportations, including those of violent criminals. Are those positions that the Democratic Party could win on nationally?
I think what the Democratic Party can win on nationally is a focus on working people. And I think that what I saw from Darlisa when I would walk the streets of her district was a focus on what she describes as a politics of life.
Politics of life, guys. That's what it is. You got to give Zohran a little bit of credit. He is obviously very charismatic, and he's very good at the slippery politician thing of receiving a question about something specific that is unfavorable to you and totally disregarding the actual thing you're being asked about and pivoting to something generic and nice sounding. It's one of the most maddening things that politicians do. And over the years, I've interviewed dozens of congressmen and senators and several governors as well. And it's like, I actually hate doing it because most of them won't speak to you like a real human or actually address the things you're saying or asking about. They'll just pivot to talking points and bumper sticker slogans, and that's what he did. Well, I'm really excited about Darlisa's message of the politics of the working class and of life. And it's like, bro, he just asked you whether you agree with her when she repeatedly wouldn't say if a murderer should be in prison. How is this a question? How can you not just say, yeah, actually, no, that's crazy. I support some of what she's doing. I'll work with her, but that takes out there. She's got to come back to reality on that one. Would it kill you to say that, Zohran? And I'm sorry, but like to even suggest remotely that these DSA types that have these totally utopian, dystopian, fantastical ideas about ending policing, ending immigration enforcement, having no border whatsoever, that is somehow a politics of life. Not for any of the people who would be irreparably harmed by that. Not giving politics of life to me. It's giving politics of anarchy and chaos and death and destruction to me, actually. But, I mean, listen, I understand that he doesn't want to criticize his friends or what have you, but the idea that Zohran can't bring himself to actually just agree that this stuff is insane is pathetic. And he really did double down on this because Jonathan Karl kind of pressed him on this, and he's like, you're not really responding to my point. Here's how Zohran responded. Let's keep going here and look at our second clip.
But how does abolishing prisons or having open borders fit into that? I mean, do you see how those are ideas that a lot of your Democrats that are warning about what happened here say are toxic. Most of America won't go along with it. Are bad ideas. They're dangerous ideas.
I think what the focus of her race was, what the focus of her candidacy was about the struggle that working people are facing. And I think that we can have disagreements on policy positions. What we have to agree on is what are we fighting for and who are we fighting for? She showed that in her race, and I think that many people will come to appreciate that in her leadership to come.
So we can disagree on something as basic as whether or not there should be prisons?
That's
not your position.
There are prisons,
yes.
And what we're also showing in this city is that safety is not something that's up for debate.
Wow. Just wow. I mean, A+ for gaslighting and deflecting, I guess, because when you're asked about somebody who wants to abolish prisons or end prisons and I guess just let the murderers out on the street, or maybe they'll be assigned to a restorative justice council or something. I'm not even really kidding. That's what those people believe. And you say, well, there are prisons. That is totally, unequivocally non-responsive to the question. That's like if I ask you, are you pro-life or pro-choice? Do you want to outlaw abortion or do you want to restrict abortion? You go, well, there are abortions that happen every year. You didn't answer my question at all. It's just a total insane dodge and non-statement about something that, like, should not take a sane or semi-serious person even 10 seconds of thinking or hesitation to just say, of course that's crazy. Of course we're not going to abolish prisons. Of course we need, a functioning police department, and we're going to work on training them better so that they have fewer, altercations that go wrong, or we're going to work on respecting civil liberties or whatever, or holding bad officers accountable, or any of that would be fine. But to do this, to double down on this kind of thing, and then to frame it as, oh, well, we can have policy disagreements. One, you're not even clear whether you disagree with her. So how are we supposed to know if this is a policy disagreement about the abolish prisons, don't even deport murderers, any of this? This is your buddy you campaigned with and rallied around. And you're saying, well, we can have policy disagreements. But then he's asking you quite clearly to state for the record that you disagree, and you are declining to do so. And that's what people need to understand about Zohran Mamdani. He doesn't actually disagree. This is who he is. He's just like these people at his core, at his foundation. He spent years and years and years before he ran for mayor and won largely just because the other candidate was so incredibly unpopular and flawed. Andrew Cuomo had been a horrific, horrifying, scandal-plagued governor, and he obviously kind of was a candidate that anyone was going to have a good chance against. So Zohran is now sort of rebranding himself more in style and rhetoric than in actual substance, but his entire political career, he was one of these crazies. His old tweets, his old messaging, his old statements, his old interviews, all of them suggest that he actually does agree with all of this stuff. And to the extent he's not openly embracing it, it's just a political maneuver because he can't quite swing it as mayor right now. But in his heart of hearts, he really is one of these crazy radicals. And that's what people need to understand about him, because he's so charismatic. He's great at social media. He's handsome. He comes off well on camera. Please do not mistake this guy for Barack Obama, okay? He is not that. He is a deep, deep ideological radical aligned with everything these DSA candidates are saying. And then some. He's just kind of snake oil salesmaning his way out of being held accountable for some of those more extreme positions. I want to show you a clip of Zohran himself, in case you doubt me, which I don't know why you would ever be doing that, because that's very silly of you. But in case you doubt me, here is a clip from August of 2020, where Zohran made an appearance on the quite aptly named podcast, The Far Left Show. Here's what he had to say about prisons at that time. Listen to this.
Are prisons obsolete?
Whew, coming through with the quotes, coming through with the titles of the books. I have to read that, actually. I haven't read that as yet. But I think that, frankly, what purpose do they serve? Right? I think we have to ask ourselves that, which is that, I think a lot of people who defend the carceral state, they defend the idea of it and the way it makes them feel.
Yeah? I don't know about y'all. Maybe maybe I'm the crazy one. It does make me feel better when murderers and rapists are behind bars for a very long time. And I say that as somebody who's sympathetic to a lot of criminal justice reform efforts and scaling back our, mass incarceration system and other things. But when you're actually doubting the idea of prisons themselves, to me, it's like saying that it's just a tell that you're not serious, right? And so I also want to put the context of this, that this was 2020, and Zohran Mamdani is 34 years old now. I just looked it up to make sure. So it's not like we're pulling crazy tweets from when he was 16, that he is clearly, are not representative of who he is. In 2020, when he was, oh God, we're testing my math now, but that's 6 years ago. He's 34 now. So he was 28 years old. He was actively a working politician. He's going on crazy fringe podcasts and saying, what do prisons even do? What purpose do they even serve other than your feelings? Also, aren't you supposed to be the one that cares about people's feelings? Interesting little side tangent there. To me, I still can't believe this guy's actually the mayor of New York City. He was like openly radical and Marxist his entire career. And that's what's so interesting about any attempt to avoid it from his camp or his supporters' association with these new far-left 3 congressional representatives that are going to be aligned with the Democratic Socialists of America and are going to enter Congress and become their new champions and join the other DSA-aligned candidates and congresspeople that are already in Washington. Zohran is going to try, and he's already trying, as you can see in this interview, to attach himself to the good and expedient parts, like the energy and fighting corporations and like the hype of these candidates, while avoiding their baggage. And we can't allow him or anyone else to do that unless they're actually willing to explicitly denounce it and say they disagree and this is crazy. If they're not willing to do so, then they need to be held accountable for their allies and their crazy takes, especially when those crazy takes are actually low-key what these people believe as well. And I do believe that to be the case with Zohran Mamdani. As much as the media loves him, as much as he's a new Democratic darling, he is at heart, and in quite recent, his entire career in political history, just as radical as these new congresspeople he's suddenly dodging questions about. At least that's my take. You guys will have to let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Hit the like button. Do become a channel member to support my content if you can. Hit the join button down below. And we'll leave it there. I'm sure we'll talk about Zohran again real soon. He just enacted a rent freeze that he's celebrating, but I think is going to backfire and is rooted in very ignorant policy. I'll probably do a video on that as well. But guys, we'll leave it there for now. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back with more real soon.